what is the deal with that, Nick? I heard about that too, and I haven't been able to catch up on it.
I'm being sued by a retard named Montegraph for calling him a retard. Yeah,
like
his
that.
lawyer's also
Holy
being
shit.
a little bit of a right now. So, which I have no problem saying. On Rumble, I'll tell you what they wrote that I said that's so offensive, which is pretty funny because like none of that's defamatory, mostly because it's true. Reminder, David Schneider was very mad that I called him a So here we go. Here is the response that I sent to the lawyer's professional responsibility office. This is a frivolous complaint aimed entirely at silencing my speech in the same manner as the frivolous lawsuit filed by his client, who has a habitual history of filing and losing multiple frivolous lawsuits over protected speech. My statement that Mr. Schneider is an absolute is explained by Mr. Schneider's admitted lack of willingness to engage with me related to the matter before the court. Yeah,
like
his
that.
lawyer's also
Holy
being
shit.
a little bit of a cunt right now. Mr. Schneider served his frivolous lawsuit in mid-December. Around December 30th, I requested an extension to engage counsel and file a response until January 31st due to the holiday season complicating the retention of counsel and drafting of a response to his allegedly serious lawsuit. Mr. Schneider never responded, nor did I get an out-of-office email of any kind. I contacted his law office. I left multiple voicemails and left messages with his receptionist. I even physically went to the law office. At no point was I informed that Mr. Schneider was unavailable or somehow disabled from contacting me back. This is a simple matter of requesting an extension to an answer in a civil matter, something routinely handled between parties without issue. There was no history or animosity between me and Mr. Schneider. In fact, I'd actually stated publicly that all of my encounters with his firm were positive prior to this. When I was just starting out as a lawyer, in fact, I went and interviewed with them and they're like, we're not hiring. And I was like, okay, well, that sucks. I'm trying to like get hired by somebody in this area. And they said, but here's what we'll do. We have a basement. And if you pay for an internet connection in the basement, you can set up shop down there on your own. You can bring in your own clients or whatever. And then, you know, if you have any questions or whatever, you know, we're happy to help out and just like kind of give you advice and stuff like that. I'm like, cool, that sounds great. They're like, yeah, we'll give you office space for free. All you have to do is pay for your electricity and internet. Like, awesome. 2 weeks later, I call them up. I'm like, hey guys, remember when you said that you would do this? Like, how do we do this? And they're like, no, I don't remember that. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't remember that? I'm like, we talked for like 3 fucking hours. We had this 3-hour interview in your office. We were laughing. You're like, yeah, you can come in. They're like, I don't know. So it's like, okay, fine. Fuck you. I'll open my own shop. So I went and rented my own place and opened my own shop. No big deal. And then the first case I had against them, I went and I shit in their bathroom. A big one. All of my encounters with his firm were positive prior to this. And that the unprofessional handling from his office was surprising. I have a literal heat allergy. I will break out into hives and itchiness if I get too warm. So he's shitting on my disability. David Schneider is a who shits on my actual disability, my diagnosed condition of heat allergy, because all I wanted to do was try to not sweat and die. I walked into his office, I dropped off a document, and I had them sign acceptance of the document. That's it. By the way, you know what's even better about David Schneider? David Schneider's a fucking liar, by the way. I don't know if anybody knows this. David Schneider of Schneider Madsen Law in Wilmer, Minnesota is a fucking liar who has lied to the court multiple times. And David, yes, I am going to be filing this with the Minnesota Bar, with the Minnesota Lawyers Professional Responsibility Office, because you have done this in the scope of representing a client. You have lied to multiple people, including one of my moderators. And then the other thing is, I said he probably likes sucking little boy.
Oh, well, yeah, that's a.
You did say probably.
Montegraph has always been into sucking little boy, which is weird. But that's his thing. Look, I'm not here to stop him. I'm just saying he should probably be shot in the fucking head and sue me if you want, you child molesting. Anyway. And by the way, lying about me being representing myself when I was already represented, that was your first mistake. And when I was contacting Montegraff's lawyer, I was unrepresented at the time. So, my lawyer has not made an appearance or anything. I actually filed my motion today pro se. So, I'm not represented. There's never been any indication that I'm represented. So they kind of have to talk to me rather than respond to opposing counsel as he represents that I was pro se at the time of saying this. I was not. He chose to file for default, forcing me to request an extension from the court rather than merely agreeing to said extension. Had he merely responded at any time prior to this, he would have been informed of representation and could deal with my attorney rather than refuse to deal with me. The court did grant my request for extension, and as it was obviously reasonable and should never have plagued the court in the first place. This is why I said Mr. Schneider was being an absolute. Simply put, he was. Mr. Schneider would know that prior to January 18th, I had engaged Mark Randazza as my counsel and was no longer pro se. Further, Mr. Schneider might have forgotten that he actually knew I intended to retain a lawyer and had intended to wire the retainer payment to the lawyer several days prior. So just the retainer has been sorted so far. That is, I indicated my intention to send a retainer. By the way, I didn't. I did not do it when I indicated. So as far as the world is concerned, I am completely unrepresented. My lawyer has not made an appearance before the court. It's just me, pro se. In any case, I had retained Mark Randazza as counsel prior to January 18th, and his pro hoc vice application was filed on January 19th and granted on the 20th. Mr. Schneider is attempting to utilize the lawyer's professional responsibility office to inhibit my First Amendment rights. As stated, I was a represented defendant in the lawsuit at the time of the statement and was giving my personal opinions to a private paid audience about Mr. Schneider's unprofessional behavior. Even if I was representing a third-party client at that point, I was not, the statement would still not fall in any way under the rule. Comment 4 suggests requiring a burdening of another through the discriminatory act, rather than a mere passive failure to act properly. An insult is at worst a failure to act properly rather than some burden put on Mr. Schneider. This complaint is no different, and the weaponization of the LPRO against the First Amendment and my rights would be shameful if it weren't so pathetic. Regards, Nicholas Rekieta. That was the main response. They basically asked me after that to provide copies of any information related to when I retained Mark Randazza, which I did. And that is the effectively the last correspondence I received